When you love yourself, you teach the world how to love you.
Hi, this is Dr. Julian Vance. I hope this will teach you something today. Dr. Julian Vance has been with you all the way. And always remember, keep learning, keep pushing forward. Who stops reading, stops growing.
Introduction.
Love Yourself First is a heartfelt guide to building a strong, unshakable relationship with yourself. Through powerful lessons and practical steps, this book helps you overcome self-doubt, set healthy boundaries, and embrace your true worth. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about accepting yourself fully and creating a life where love flows from within. Whether you're healing from the past or simply seeking more confidence and peace, this book will inspire you to choose yourself every single day. Chapter 1: The Foundation of Self-Worth. Discover why self-love isn't selfish, but the key to a balanced and happy life. Learn how your relationship with yourself shapes every other connection you have. The mirror's reflection. Sarah stared at herself in the bathroom mirror, her reflection showing the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. At 32, she had achieved what many would consider success: a thriving career, beautiful home, and a social circle that envied her accomplishments. Yet standing there in the quiet morning light, she felt an overwhelming emptiness that no external achievement seemed capable of filling. "I give everything to everyone else," she whispered to her reflection. "But what do I give to myself?" This moment of raw honesty would become the turning point in Sarah's life, and perhaps it mirrors a question you've asked yourself. The journey towards self-love begins not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with the simple recognition that the relationship you have with yourself is the foundation upon which all other relationships are built. The misconception of selfishness. In our culture, we've been conditioned to believe that focusing on ourselves is inherently selfish, that true virtue lies in constant self-sacrifice and putting others' needs before our own. This belief system, while well-intentioned, has created a generation of people who are simultaneously more connected and more isolated than ever before. We pour our energy into maintaining relationships, advancing careers, and meeting societal expectations, all while neglecting the most crucial relationship of all, the one we have with ourselves. The truth is revolutionary in its simplicity. Self-love is not selfish, it's essential. When we operate from a place of genuine self-worth and self-compassion, we actually become more capable of loving others authentically and generously. Think of it like the airplane safety instruction we've all heard countless times: put in your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't selfishness, it's wisdom. You cannot give what you do not possess, and you cannot love others deeply and sustainably if you haven't first learned to love yourself. Consider Maria, a devoted mother of 3 who spent years believing that every moment focused on her own needs was time stolen from her children. She worked tirelessly to be the perfect parent, partner, and professional, but found herself increasingly irritable, resentful, and emotionally depleted. It wasn't until she began practicing self-compassion and setting healthy boundaries that she realized her children didn't need a perfect mother. They needed a happy one. When Maria began treating herself with the same kindness she showed her family, her entire household dynamic shifted. Her children learned by example that self-respect and self-care were not luxuries but necessities for a life well lived. The architecture of self-worth. Self-worth is not a single, monolithic concept, but rather a complex architecture built from multiple interconnected elements. Understanding these components helps us recognize that building self-worth is not about achieving perfection, but about developing a healthy, realistic, and compassionate relationship with ourselves. The first pillar of self-worth is self-acceptance. This doesn't mean complacency or settling for less than we're capable of achieving. Rather, it means acknowledging our current reality, our strengths and weaknesses, our achievements and failures, our light and shadow, without harsh judgment or the desperate need to be someone else. Self-acceptance is the soil in which growth becomes possible because it eliminates the energy drain that comes from constantly fighting against our authentic selves. The second pillar is self-compassion, a concept pioneered by researcher Kristen Neff that involves treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a good friend facing difficulties. When we make mistakes, experience setbacks, or fall short of our expectations, self-compassion allows us to respond with understanding rather than self-attack. This doesn't mean making excuses or avoiding responsibility. It means recognizing that imperfection is part of the human experience and that self-punishment rarely leads to positive change. The third pillar is self-respect, which manifests in the boundaries we set, the standards we maintain, and the way we allow others to treat us. Self-respect means honoring our values even when it's inconvenient, saying no to requests that compromise our well-being, and refusing to accept treatment that diminishes our dignity. It's the voice that says, "I deserve better," not from a place of entitlement, but from a deep knowing of our inherent worth as human beings. The fourth pillar is self-trust, perhaps the most fragile and crucial of all. Self-trust is built through the accumulation of small promises we make and keep to ourselves. Every time we follow through on a commitment to ourselves, whether it's going to bed at a reasonable hour, speaking up in a meeting, or choosing the healthier option, we make a deposit in our self-trust account. Conversely, every time we break our word to ourselves, we make a withdrawal. Self-trust is what allows us to take risks, pursue dreams, and navigate uncertainty with confidence in our ability to handle whatever comes our way. The ripple effect of self-relationship. The relationship you have with yourself is not a private affair that exists in isolation. It ripples outward into every aspect of your life, influencing your relationships, your work, your health, and your happiness in ways that are both subtle and profound. In romantic relationships, the quality of your self-love directly impacts your ability to love and be loved by a partner. When you have a healthy relationship with yourself, you enter relationships from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. You're not looking for someone to complete you or validate your worth. Instead, you're sharing your completeness with another complete person. This creates the foundation for genuine intimacy based on choice rather than desperation. Consider the difference between Sarah before and after her journey of self-discovery. In her previous relationships, she had unconsciously sought partners who would fill the void she felt within herself. She tolerated poor treatment because she didn't believe she deserved better, and she consistently gave more than she received because she was trying to earn love rather than share it. After developing a strong foundation of self-worth, Sarah found herself naturally attracting healthier partners and having the courage to walk away from situations that didn't serve her highest good. In friendships, self-love manifests as the ability to be authentically yourself rather than constantly adapting to please others. When you accept and appreciate yourself, you give others permission to do the same. You stop exhausting yourself by trying to be everything to everyone, and instead offer the gift of your genuine self. This authenticity attracts relationships that are based on mutual respect and genuine connection, rather than performance and people-pleasing. Your professional life, too, is deeply influenced by your relationship with yourself. When you value yourself appropriately, you're more likely to negotiate for fair compensation, seek opportunities that align with your values, and contribute your unique talents rather than hiding in the background. Self-worth gives you the courage to take calculated risks, learn from failures without being devastated by them, and maintain your integrity even under pressure. The impact extends to your physical health as well. When you truly value yourself, you naturally make choices that support your well-being. You eat foods that nourish your body not because you're punishing yourself for being bad, but because you love yourself enough to fuel yourself well. You exercise because movement feels good and makes you strong, not because you're trying to achieve some impossible standard of perfection. You prioritize sleep, manage stress effectively, and seek medical care when needed because you recognize that your health is precious and deserves attention. Breaking the chains of conditional worth. Many of us have learned to base our worth on external factors: our achievements, our appearance, our bank account, our relationship status, or the approval of others. This conditional worth is like building a house on shifting sand. No matter how impressive the structure appears, it's fundamentally unstable because it depends on factors largely outside our control. The transition from conditional to unconditional self-worth is one of the most liberating shifts a person can make. It means recognizing that your worth as a human being is inherent and unchangeable, not something that needs to be earned or proven. You are valuable not because of what you do, but because of who you are. This doesn't mean that achievements, goals, and growth aren't important. They absolutely are, but they become expressions of your worth rather than the source of it. This shift requires examining and challenging the internal messages that have shaped your self-concept. Perhaps you internalize the message that love must be earned through perfect behavior, leading you to become a chronic people-pleaser. Maybe you learned that your worth was tied to your productivity, causing you to feel guilty whenever you rest. Or possibly you were taught that your value lay in your appearance, creating exhausting preoccupation with how others perceive you physically. These internalized messages often operate below the level of conscious awareness, influencing our choices and reactions in ways we don't fully understand. The process of identifying and rewriting these scripts is not about blame or dwelling in the past, but about consciously choosing beliefs that serve your growth and well-being rather than limiting them. The practice of self-love. Self-love is not a destination but a practice, a daily choice to treat yourself with kindness, respect, and compassion. Like any skill, it improves with repetition and becomes more natural over time. The practice begins with awareness, the simple act of noticing how you speak to yourself throughout the day. Most people will be shocked if they could hear their internal dialogue played back to them. The constant criticism, the harsh judgments, the impossible standards. We often treat ourselves in ways we would never dream of treating a friend. The first step in cultivating self-love is becoming conscious of this internal voice and beginning to question whether it's helpful or harmful. Once you've developed awareness of your self-talk, you can begin the practice of conscious redirection. This doesn't mean replacing negative thoughts with artificially positive ones. That rarely works and can feel dishonest. Instead, it means learning to speak to yourself with the same compassion and understanding you would offer someone you care about who was struggling with similar challenges. The practice of self-love also involves learning to celebrate your successes without minimizing them and to comfort yourself during difficult times without harsh judgment. It means honoring your needs and feelings as valid, even when they're inconvenient or don't make logical sense. It involves making choices that align with your values and support your well-being, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular. Self-love includes the radical act of enjoying your own company. Many people are so uncomfortable with solitude that they fill every quiet moment with distraction. Television, social media, busy work, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. Learning to enjoy solitude, to find peace and even joy in your own presence, is a profound act of self-acceptance and self-love. Nurturing your inner garden. Think of your relationship with yourself as a garden that requires daily tending. Some days you'll be planting new seeds of possibility and hope. Other days you'll be weeding out old patterns and beliefs that no longer serve you. Sometimes you'll be watering the tender shoots of new growth with encouragement and patience. And occasionally you'll simply sit in your garden and appreciate the beauty of what you've cultivated. This garden metaphor reminds us that self-love is an organic process that unfolds in its own time. You can't force a flower to bloom by pulling on its petals, and you can't rush the development of self-worth through willpower alone. Growth requires patience, consistency, and faith in the process, even when progress seems slow or invisible. The seeds you plant in your inner garden are the thoughts you choose to think, the words you speak to yourself, the boundaries you set, and the choices you make each day. The soil is your willingness to be vulnerable and honest with yourself, to acknowledge both your strength and your humanity. The water is your compassion, your forgiveness, your gentle persistence in treating yourself well even when you don't feel you deserve it. Some seasons will be more challenging than others. There will be storms of criticism from others, droughts of self-doubt, and unexpected frosts of disappointment. But a well-tended garden has deep roots and resilient systems that allow it to weather these challenges and emerge even stronger. The courage to begin. Perhaps the most courageous thing you can do is to begin treating yourself as someone worthy of love and respect, especially if this is not how you've been conditioned to think about yourself. This courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act with kindness toward yourself despite the fear, uncertainty, or unfamiliarity of this new way of being. The journey of self-love will challenge many of your existing beliefs about what it means to be good, worthy, or valuable. It will ask you to question voices of authority from your past that may have taught you to diminish yourself. It will require you to disappoint some people who have grown accustomed to your self-sacrifice. It will demand that you take responsibility for your own happiness rather than waiting for others to provide it. But this courage to love yourself is not a luxury. It's a necessity for anyone who wants to live a life of meaning, connection, and joy. It's the foundation upon which all other positive changes in your life will be built. When you love yourself, you create space for others to love you authentically. When you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you. When you trust yourself, you develop the confidence to pursue your dreams and weather life's inevitable challenges. The promise of self-love. As you embark on or continue this journey of self-love, know that you are not just changing your own life, you are contributing to a more compassionate world. Every person who learns to treat themselves with kindness and respect raises the standard for how we treat one another. Every individual who develops a healthy relationship with themselves models for others that such a relationship is possible. Your self-love gives others permission to love themselves. Your self-respect teaches others about boundaries and dignity. Your self-compassion demonstrates that mistakes and imperfections don't disqualify us from love and belonging. In loving yourself, you become part of the solution to a world that desperately needs more kindness, understanding, and acceptance. The foundation of self-worth that we've explored in this chapter is not built once and then forgotten. It's a living foundation that grows stronger with each act of self-kindness, each boundary you honor, each time you choose to speak to yourself with love rather than criticism. This foundation will support everything else we'll explore together. The courage to set boundaries, the wisdom to forgive yourself and others, the strength to pursue your dreams, and the grace to navigate relationships with authenticity and love. Remember Sarah, standing in front of her mirror in that moment of honest recognition? Today, she stands in the same bathroom, but everything has changed. The reflection looking back at her shows not perfection, but wholeness. Not someone who has it all figured out, but someone who has learned to be patient and kind with herself as she continues to grow. The exhaustion has been replaced not with endless energy, but with a sustainable peace that comes from living in alignment with her values and treating herself as someone worthy of love. This is the promise that awaits you as you commit to building a foundation of self-worth, not perfection, but wholeness, not constant happiness, but sustainable peace, not the absence of challenges, but the presence of a loving, supportive relationship with yourself that will carry you through whatever life brings. The journey begins with a single step, a single moment of choosing to treat yourself with kindness. From that moment, everything becomes possible. Chapter 2: Breaking the Chains of Self-Doubt. Uncover the hidden beliefs and past experiences that have been holding you back. This chapter guides you through reframing negative self-talk and replacing it with empowering thoughts. The invisible prison we build. Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the same ritual she performed every morning for the past decade. But instead of seeing her accomplishments, the successful business she'd built, the loving relationships she'd cultivated, the challenges she'd overcome, all she could hear was that familiar voice. The one that whispered she wasn't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. The one that had been her constant companion since childhood, growing stronger with each perceived failure and quieter only during her rare moments of triumph. What Sarah didn't realize was that she was living in an invisible prison, one constructed not of steel bars but of limiting beliefs, inherited doubts, and a lifetime of conditioning that had taught her to question her own worth. She had become the warden of her own limitations, and the key to freedom had been in her pocket all along. This is the reality for millions of people who struggle with self-doubt. We carry within us an internal dialogue that often contradicts our external achievements. We become our own worst critics, holding ourselves to impossible standards while extending grace and understanding to others. The chains of self-doubt are perhaps the most restrictive bonds we'll ever encounter, precisely because we've forged them ourselves, link by painful link, over years of conditioning and experience. Understanding the anatomy of self-doubt is the first step toward dismantling its power over our lives. Self-doubt isn't just a fleeting feeling of uncertainty. It's a complex psychological pattern that interweaves our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors into a self-reinforcing cycle. When we doubt ourselves, we hesitate to take action. When we hesitate, we miss opportunities. When we miss opportunities, we gather evidence that supports our original doubt, creating a downward spiral that can feel impossible to escape. The insidious nature of self-doubt lies in its ability to masquerade as protection. Our minds, in their infinite desire to keep us safe, often interpret confidence and risk-taking as dangerous. Better to stay small, stay safe, stay within the familiar boundaries of what we know we can handle. This protective mechanism served our ancestors well when physical survival was the primary concern, but in our modern world, it often prevents us from the very experiences that would help us grow, thrive, and discover our true potential. The archaeology of limiting beliefs. To understand where our self-doubt comes from, we must become archaeologists of our own experience, carefully excavating the layers of conditioning that have shaped our self-perception. Our limiting beliefs rarely emerge from a single traumatic event. More often, they're the result of countless small moments, repeated messages, and unconscious absorption of the fears and limitations of those around us. Consider the child who raises her hand enthusiastically in 3rd grade, only to be told her answer is wrong in front of the entire class. The teacher's intention might be purely educational, but the child's developing mind might interpret this moment as evidence that speaking up leads to humiliation. Fast forward 20 years, and that same child, now an adult, finds herself paralyzed during important meetings, convinced that her ideas aren't worth sharing. The 8-year-old's moment of embarrassment has become the 30-year-old's professional limitation. Our early experiences with authority figures, parents, teachers, coaches, religious leaders, form the foundation of our self-concept. Children are naturally egocentric, meaning they interpret events through the lens of their own responsibility and worth. When a parent is consistently stressed, a child might conclude they're the cause. When a teacher seems frustrated, a student might assume they're not smart enough. When peers exclude or tease, a child might decide they're fundamentally unlovable or different in ways that make them unacceptable. These early conclusions become the bedrock of our belief system, operating below the level of conscious awareness but powerfully influencing our choices and behaviors decades later. They create what psychologists call cognitive schemas, mental frameworks that help us process new information quickly by comparing it to past experiences. While these schemas can be helpful for rapid decision-making, they can also trap us in outdated patterns of thinking that no longer serve our growth. Family dynamics play a particularly crucial role in shaping our self-doubt patterns. In families where love feels conditional on performance, children learn to equate their worth with their achievements. They develop what's known as a contingent self-worth, a sense that their value as a person depends entirely on external validation and success. These children often become adults who are never satisfied with their accomplishments, always pushing themselves harder in pursuit of a sense of worthiness that remains perpetually just out of reach. Conversely, in families where children are overprotected or consistently rescued from challenges, they may never develop confidence in their own abilities. They learn to doubt their capacity to handle difficulties independently, creating a different but equally limiting form of self-doubt that manifests as chronic anxiety about making decisions or facing challenges alone. Cultural and societal messages also contribute significantly to our self-doubt patterns. We absorb messages about what it means to be successful, attractive, intelligent, or worthy from media, peer groups, and societal institutions. These messages often promote unrealistic standards and create comparison traps that fuel feelings of inadequacy. Social media has amplified this phenomenon, creating unprecedented opportunities for comparison with carefully curated versions of others' lives. The language of self-limitation. One of the most powerful tools self-doubt uses to maintain its hold over us is language. The words we use when we talk to ourselves, our internal dialogue, literally shape our reality. This isn't metaphorical or philosophical, it's neurological. Our brains are constantly forming and reforming neural pathways based on our repeated thoughts and behaviors. When we consistently engage in negative self-talk, we strengthen the neural networks associated with self-criticism and weaken those associated with self-compassion and confidence. The language of self-doubt has several distinctive characteristics. It tends to be absolute rather than nuanced, using words like always, never, everything, and nothing. It personalizes setbacks, attributing failures to permanent character flaws rather than temporary circumstances or learnable skills. It catastrophizes, imagining worst-case scenarios and treating them as inevitable outcomes. And it compares, constantly measuring our insides against others' outsides and finding us wanting. Listen to the difference between these two internal responses to the same situation, making a mistake during a presentation at work. Self-doubt voice, I'm such an idiot. I always mess up when it matters. Everyone probably thinks I'm incompetent. I'll never be good at public speaking. I should just accept that I'm not leadership material and stay in the background where I belong. Self-compassionate voice, that was embarrassing, and I feel disappointed about the mistake. Most people probably didn't notice as much as I think they did. Even if they did, one mistake doesn't define my entire capability. I can learn from this experience and prepare differently next time. Everyone makes mistakes when they're stretching themselves to grow. The first voice creates a story of permanent inadequacy based on a single incident. It globalizes the mistake, making it about the person's entire identity rather than a specific behavior. It predicts negative outcomes without evidence and discourages future attempts at growth. The second voice acknowledges the disappointment without allowing it to become a referendum on personal worth. It maintains perspective, encourages learning, and keeps the door open for future growth. Identifying your personal patterns. Self-doubt manifests differently for each person, shaped by unique experiences, temperament, and circumstances. Some people experience it as perfectionism, an impossible need to get everything right the first time. Others experience it as imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud despite evidence of competence and success. Still others experience it as chronic indecision, endless second-guessing, or persistent worry about others' opinions. To break free from self-doubt, you must first understand your own specific patterns. This requires honest self-reflection and often the willingness to examine painful or uncomfortable aspects of your inner experience. But this exploration is not about judgment or self-criticism. It's about developing the kind of clear-eyed understanding that makes change possible. Start by becoming curious about your internal experience. When you notice self-doubt arising most strongly, what situations tend to trigger those familiar feelings of inadequacy or uncertainty? What thoughts typically accompany these feelings? How do you behave when you're in the grip of self-doubt? Do you withdraw, overcompensate, seek excessive reassurance, or procrastinate? Pay attention to your physical sensations as well. Self-doubt often manifests in the body as tension, shallow breathing, a churning stomach, or a feeling of heaviness. Learning to recognize these physical signals can help you catch self-doubt earlier, before it fully takes hold of your thoughts and behaviors. Notice the themes that run through your self-doubting thoughts. Do you consistently worry about not being smart enough, attractive enough, successful enough? Do you fear being judged, rejected, or exposed as inadequate? Do you struggle with feeling like you don't belong, or that you're somehow fundamentally different from others in ways that make you less acceptable? Also, pay attention to the context where self-doubt is strongest. Some people experience it most acutely in professional settings, others in social situations, still others in intimate relationships. Understanding the environmental triggers can help you prepare for and navigate challenging situations with greater awareness and intention. Consider keeping a self-doubt journal for a week or two, noting when these feelings arise, what triggered them, what thoughts accompany them, and how you responded. This exercise often reveals patterns that aren't obvious in the moment but become clear when viewed from a broader perspective. The stories we tell ourselves. Humans are storytelling creatures. We don't just experience events, we create narratives about what those events mean. These stories become the lens through which we interpret all future experiences, and they often have far more impact on our emotional well-being than the actual events themselves. The stories we tell ourselves about our capabilities, worth, and potential are particularly powerful. Someone who interprets a job rejection as evidence that they're unemployable will have a very different experience than someone who interprets the same rejection as a sign that they weren't the right fit for that particular role. The external event is identical, but the internal story creates entirely different emotional and behavioral outcomes. Most of us have several core stories about ourselves that we've been telling and retelling for years. These stories feel absolutely true because we gathered so much evidence to support them over time. But evidence gathering is often biased. We notice and remember information that confirms our existing beliefs while dismissing or forgetting information that contradicts them. Consider these common self-doubt stories and notice if any feel familiar. I'm not smart enough to succeed in challenging situations. This story leads people to avoid opportunities that might stretch their capabilities, ensuring they never gather evidence that might contradict the belief. They interpret struggles or failures as confirmation of their limitations rather than normal parts of the learning process. I'm too sensitive for the real world. This story keeps people from asserting boundaries, expressing their needs, or pursuing their goals with full commitment. They interpret their emotional responses as weaknesses rather than valuable sources of information and connection. I don't have what it takes to be truly successful. This story creates a glass ceiling on ambition and achievement. People with this story often sabotage themselves just as they're on the verge of breakthrough, unconsciously proving their belief about their limitations. I'm fundamentally damaged or broken. This story, often rooted in past trauma or difficult experiences, creates a sense of being different from others in ways that make genuine connection or success impossible. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy as people with this story often don't invest fully in relationships or opportunities. The power of these stories lies not just in their content but in their invisibility. They operate as background assumptions about reality rather than conscious beliefs we can examine and question. Learning to identify and challenge these stories is essential for breaking free from self-doubt's limitations. Rewriting your narrative. Once you've identified the limiting stories you've been telling yourself, the next step is to consciously begin rewriting them. This isn't about replacing negative thoughts with positive affirmations that feel fake or unrealistic. It's about creating more accurate, nuanced, and empowering narratives that honor your real experiences while opening up possibilities for growth and change. The process begins with questioning the absolute truth of your current stories. Just because you believed something about yourself for years doesn't make it objectively true. Our self-perceptions are often based on limited information, outdated experiences, or misinterpretations of past events. Ask yourself, What evidence do I have that supports this story? What evidence contradicts it? What evidence might I have overlooked or dismissed? How might someone who cares about me interpret these same experiences? What did I tell a good friend who was telling me this story about themselves? This questioning process isn't about invalidating your experiences or pretending difficult things didn't happen. It's about expanding your perspective to include the full complexity of your experience rather than the selective editing that self-doubt tends to do. Next, begin experimenting with alternative interpretations of your experiences. If you've always told yourself that you're not good with people because you feel awkward in large social gatherings, consider other possible explanations. Maybe you're more introverted and do better in smaller groups. Maybe you're highly sensitive and pick up on social nuances that others miss, making crowded environments overwhelming. Maybe you just haven't found your people yet, the contexts and communities where your natural way of being is appreciated and valued. The goal is not to find the one right interpretation, but to recognize that multiple interpretations are possible. This recognition alone can be liberating, as it breaks the spell of believing that your limiting stories are absolute truths rather than just one possible way of understanding your experience. As you begin to question old stories, start consciously creating new ones based on a more complete and compassionate view of yourself. These new stories should acknowledge your challenges and growth areas while also recognizing your strengths, progress, and potential. They should be specific rather than general, nuanced rather than absolute, and focused on capabilities that can be developed rather than fixed traits. Instead of "I'm bad at public speaking," try "I'm still developing my public speaking skills, and I get nervous in front of large groups, but I communicate well in smaller settings and I'm committed to growing in this area." Instead of "I'm not creative," try "I haven't discovered the forms of creativity that resonate with me yet, but I have unique perspectives and problem-solving abilities that could be expressed creatively in the right context." Instead of "I always mess up relationships," try "I've had some painful relationship experiences that taught me important lessons about what I need and value. I'm learning to communicate more clearly and choose partners who are compatible with my authentic self." The third component is mindfulness, observing your thoughts and feelings with clear awareness rather than being overwhelmed by them or suppressing them. This means noticing when self-doubt arises without immediately believing every thought or getting caught up in the emotional drama. You can observe the experience with curiosity rather than judgment, creating space for choice about how to respond. Developing self-compassion often feels foreign at first, especially for people who've been practicing self-criticism for years. You might worry that being kind to yourself will make you lazy or complacent, but research shows the opposite is true. Self-compassion actually increases motivation, resilience, and performance because it creates a safe internal environment for taking risks and learning from mistakes. Start practicing self-compassion in small ways. When you notice self-critical thoughts arising, pause and ask yourself, "What do I need right now?" Sometimes you need comfort, sometimes clarity, sometimes courage to take action despite uncertainty. Respond to yourself the way you would respond to someone you love who is struggling with similar challenges. Develop a repertoire of self-compassionate responses you can draw on when self-doubt strikes. This might include placing your hand on your heart and taking a few deep breaths, reminding yourself that this feeling is temporary and you've overcome challenges before, or simply saying to yourself, "This is hard right now, and it's okay that it's hard." Building new neural pathways. Creating lasting change in your relationship with self-doubt requires consistent practice over time. Just as you didn't develop these patterns overnight, you won't transform them overnight either. But every moment of conscious choice to respond differently is literally rewiring your brain and moving you toward greater freedom and self-trust. One of the most effective ways to build new neural pathways is through what neuroscientists call experience-dependent neuroplasticity, creating new experiences that challenge your old beliefs about yourself. This means gradually exposing yourself to situations that would have previously triggered intense self-doubt while practicing your new skills of self-awareness and self-compassion. If you've always believed you're not capable of leadership, look for small opportunities to practice leadership skills in low-risk environments. Volunteer to organize a social gathering, offer to mentor someone junior to you, or take the initiative on a project at work. Notice how you handle these experiences differently when you approach them with curiosity rather than certainty about your inadequacy. If you've convinced yourself you're not creative, experiment with different forms of creative expression without attachment to the outcome. Take a painting class, write in a journal, learn to play an instrument, or simply approach everyday problems with a more creative mindset. The goal is not to become an artist, but to gather new evidence about your capabilities and interests. The key is to start small and build gradually. Jumping into situations that feel overwhelmingly challenging will likely trigger your old patterns of self-doubt rather than create opportunities for new learning. But consistently stretching yourself just beyond your comfort zone will create a steady accumulation of evidence that contradicts your limiting beliefs. As you practice new behaviors, pay attention to your internal dialogue and consciously practice more supportive self-talk. Instead of the running commentary of criticism and doubt you might be used to, offer yourself encouragement, acknowledge your courage for trying something new, and celebrate small wins along the way. The ripple effect of self-trust. As you begin to break free from the chains of self-doubt, you'll likely notice changes that extend far beyond your internal experience. Self-doubt doesn't just limit our self-perception. It limits our ability to contribute fully to our relationships, work, and communities. When we believe in ourselves, we show up differently in every area of our lives. People who have learned to manage their self-doubt tend to be better partners, friends, and colleagues because they're not constantly seeking external validation or protection from their own fears of inadequacy. They can offer genuine support to others because they're not depleted by their own internal struggles. They can take appropriate risks and make decisions more efficiently because they trust their ability to handle whatever outcomes arise. In professional settings, people with healthy self-regard are often more innovative and collaborative because they're not paralyzed by fears of making mistakes or looking foolish. They can receive feedback without interpreting it as a wholesale indictment of their worth. They can advocate for themselves appropriately and pursue opportunities aligned with their goals rather than just taking whatever feels safe. In relationships, freedom from excessive self-doubt allows for greater intimacy and authenticity. When you're not constantly worried about being judged or rejected, you can show up as your genuine self rather than a carefully curated version designed to avoid criticism. You can communicate your needs clearly, set appropriate boundaries, and choose relationships based on compatibility and mutual growth rather than just acceptance and validation. Perhaps most importantly, breaking free from self-doubt allows you to pursue your authentic goals and values rather than constantly adjusting your path based on fears and limitations. You can make choices based on what truly matters to you rather than what feels safest or most likely to gain others' approval. The ongoing journey. Breaking the chains of self-doubt is not a destination, but an ongoing practice. Even as you develop greater self-awareness and self-compassion, you'll likely still encounter moments when old patterns resurface, especially during times of stress, transition, or challenge. This is completely normal and doesn't mean you've failed or aren't making progress. The goal is not to eliminate self-doubt entirely, but to change your relationship with it. Instead of being controlled by these feelings, you can learn to recognize them as old patterns that no longer serve you. You can acknowledge their presence without being overwhelmed by them and choose responses that align with your current values and goals rather than your historical fears. Think of developing self-trust like building physical fitness. You don't go to the gym once and become permanently fit. You engage in regular practice that maintains and builds your strength over time. Similarly, developing confidence and self-compassion requires ongoing attention and practice, but the benefits compound over time, making each subsequent challenge easier to navigate. Some days will be easier than others. Some old patterns will be more persistent and require more conscious effort to interrupt and redirect. This variability is part of the process, not evidence that you're doing it wrong. The key is to maintain perspective, celebrate progress rather than demanding perfection, and remember that every moment of conscious choice is moving you in the direction of greater freedom and authenticity. As you continue this journey, consider creating support systems that reinforce your new patterns rather than your old ones. Seek out relationships and environments that reflect your growing self-trust back to you. Limit exposure to people, media, or situations that consistently trigger your old patterns of self-doubt without offering opportunities for growth. Surround yourself with reminders of your progress, your values, and your commitment to treating yourself with kindness and respect. The chains of self-doubt may have been years in the making, but they need not be permanent fixtures in your life. With patience, practice, and persistence, you can forge new patterns of self-relationship that honor both your humanity and your potential. The person you become in the process of breaking these chains will be someone worthy of your own love and respect. And perhaps more importantly, someone capable of offering that same love and respect to others who are still struggling to find their way free. Your journey towards self-love necessarily begins with releasing the beliefs that have convinced you that such love is undeserved or impossible. In questioning these beliefs, Challenging these stories and choosing moment by moment to treat yourself with greater kindness and respect, you're not just changing your own life. You're contributing to a world where self-doubt loses its power to limit human potential, and self-love becomes the foundation from which we create, connect, and grow. Chapter 3. Setting boundaries without guilt. Learn how to protect your emotional energy by setting healthy boundaries. Find the courage to say no when needed and understand that protecting your peace is an act of self-respect. The foundation of self-respect. There's a profound moment in every person's journey towards self-love when they realize that saying yes to everyone else means saying no to themselves. This realization often comes wrapped in exhaustion, resentment, or the hollow feeling of being stretched too thin across too many commitments that don't truly serve your highest good. Boundaries are not walls built from selfishness or cruelty. They are bridges built from self-awareness, leading you toward a life that honors your values, energy, and emotional well-being. When you set a boundary, you're not pushing people away. You're creating space for authentic relationships to flourish and for your own inner peace to take root and grow. Think of boundaries as the frame around a beautiful painting. Without the frame, the artwork loses its definition, its power, its ability to command attention and respect. Your life, your energy, your emotional landscape, these are your masterpiece, and boundaries are the frame that gives them structure, protection, and clarity. Yet so many of us struggle with guilt when we attempt to set these necessary limits. We've been conditioned to believe that putting our needs first is somehow wrong, that being available to everyone at all times is a virtue, that our worth is measured by how much we can give until we're running on empty. This conditioning runs deep, often starting in childhood, where we learn that love might be conditional on our compliance, our helpfulness, our willingness to put others' needs before our own. We absorb messages that good people sacrifice themselves, that saying no is mean, that protecting our own well-being is selfish. But here's the truth that will set you free. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot love others fully when you haven't learned to love yourself enough to protect your own emotional energy. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential. It's not mean, it's meaningful. It's not cruel, it's courageous. Understanding your emotional energy. Your emotional energy is one of your most precious resources. Unlike physical energy, which can be restored with rest and nutrition, emotional energy requires deeper restoration, time for reflection, activities that bring you joy, relationships that nourish rather than drain you, and space to simply be without the pressure to perform or please. Every interaction you have either deposits energy into your emotional bank account or makes a withdrawal from it. Healthy relationships, meaningful work, activities aligned with your values, these make deposits. Toxic relationships, energy vampires, commitments that don't serve you, saying yes when every fiber of your being wants to say no, these create withdrawals. When your emotional energy account is overdrawn, you begin operating from a deficit. You become irritable, anxious, overwhelmed. You might find yourself snapping at people you love, feeling resentful about commitments you've made, or experiencing a general sense of dissatisfaction with life, even when things appear to be going well on the surface. This is where boundaries become not just helpful, but absolutely necessary for your mental and emotional health. They help you manage your energy expenditure, ensuring that you're investing in relationships and activities that genuinely matter to you while protecting yourself from those that consistently drain you without offering anything meaningful in return. Learning to recognize the signs of energy depletion is the first step in understanding why boundaries matter so much. Do you feel exhausted after spending time with certain people? Do you dread checking your phone because of the demands waiting for you? Do you say yes to things and immediately feel a sinking feeling in your stomach? These are all signals that your boundaries need attention. Your body and emotions are constantly giving you information about what feels good and what doesn't, what energizes you and what depletes you, what aligns with your values and what conflicts with them. The key is learning to listen to these signals and trust them enough to act on them, even when doing so feels uncomfortable at first. The guilt complex, where it comes from and how to overcome it. Guilt around boundary setting often stems from deeply ingrained beliefs about what it means to be a good person. Many of us learned early that being good meant being accommodating, helpful, available, and self-sacrificing. We developed an internal voice that whispers accusations when we consider putting our needs first. That's selfish. You're being mean. What will people think? This guilt complex is often reinforced by people in our lives who benefit from our lack of boundaries. When you've been the person everyone turns to, the one who always says yes, the reliable people pleaser, others may resist your attempts to establish limits. They might use guilt as a tool to maintain the status quo, making comments like, "You've changed," or "I thought I could count on you." Understanding that other people's discomfort with your boundaries is often about their own issues, not about your worth as a person, is crucial for moving past the guilt. When someone reacts poorly to a boundary you've set, it's usually because they've grown accustomed to having unlimited access to your time and energy. Their reaction is information about their expectations, not a judgment on your character. It's also important to recognize that healthy people respect boundaries. When you set a limit with someone who genuinely cares about your well-being, they may be initially disappointed, but they'll ultimately understand and respect your decision. If someone consistently pushes against your boundaries, tries to make you feel guilty for having them, or refuses to respect them, this tells you something important about the nature of your relationship with them. The journey from guilt to self-respect requires patience with yourself. You're rewiring neural pathways that have been reinforced for years, possibly decades. Each time you set a boundary and sit with the discomfort that might arise, you're building emotional muscle. You're teaching yourself that your needs matter, that your well-being is important, that you deserve to be treated with respect. Start by examining the stories you tell yourself about boundaries. Do you believe that saying no makes you a bad person? Do you think that your worth is tied to how much you can do for others? Do you feel responsible for other people's emotions? These beliefs, while understandable given how you may have been raised, are not serving your highest good. Replace these limiting beliefs with empowering truths. I can say no and still be a caring person. My worth is inherent, not earned through constant giving. I am responsible for my own emotions, and others are responsible for theirs. Setting boundaries allows me to show up more fully in my relationships. The anatomy of healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are clear, consistent, and communicated with kindness but firmness. They're not arbitrary walls built from anger or resentment, but thoughtful limits established from a place of self-awareness and self-respect. Understanding what healthy boundaries look like can help you implement them more effectively in your own life. First, healthy boundaries are proactive rather than reactive. Instead of waiting until you're overwhelmed, resentful, or burned out, you establish limits before you reach your breaking point. This requires developing awareness of your own capacity, energy levels, and emotional needs. It means paying attention to early warning signs and taking action before small issues become major problems. Healthy boundaries are also specific and clear. Vague statements like "I need more space" or "I can't do everything" are less effective than specific limits such as "I won't be available for phone calls after 9 p.m. on weekdays," or "I can help with this project for 2 hours on Saturday morning, but I won't be able to take on additional tasks this week." Consistency is another hallmark of healthy boundaries. When you set a limit, it's important to maintain it even when others test it or when you feel pressured to make exceptions. Inconsistent boundaries are confusing for both you and others, and they often lead to more conflict and stress than clear, consistently maintained limits. Healthy boundaries are also flexible when appropriate. This doesn't mean abandoning your limits whenever someone asks, but rather recognizing that life sometimes requires adjustments. The key is making these adjustments consciously and temporarily, not out of guilt or pressure. For example, you might normally not work weekends, but you could choose to make an exception for a truly important deadline while making it clear that this is not the new norm. Communication style matters tremendously when setting boundaries. Healthy boundaries are communicated with respect for both yourself and others. You don't need to be harsh, mean, or aggressive. You also don't need to over-explain, justify, or apologize excessively for having limits. A simple, clear statement of your boundary, delivered with kindness but firmness, is usually most effective. It's also important to understand that boundaries apply to your own behavior, not to controlling others. You can't set a boundary that requires someone else to change their behavior, but you can set limits on how you'll respond to their behavior. For instance, instead of saying, "You need to stop calling me so much," you might say, "I'll be turning off my phone after 9 p.m., so if you call after that time, I'll respond the next day." Practical strategies for setting boundaries. Learning to set boundaries is a skill that improves with practice. Like any new skill, it may feel awkward or uncomfortable at first, but with time and repetition, it becomes more natural and intuitive. Here are practical strategies you can start implementing immediately to protect your emotional energy and create healthier relationships. Begin with small, low-stakes situations to build your confidence. If setting a major boundary with your boss or a family member feels overwhelming, start by practicing with less emotionally charged situations. Decline an invitation to an event you don't want to attend, or let a phone call go to voicemail when you're not in the right headspace to talk. These smaller boundary-setting exercises help you build the emotional muscle you'll need for bigger challenges. Prepare for pushback and have a plan for how you'll respond. When people are used to unlimited access to your time and energy, they may not initially respect your new boundaries. They might argue, guilt trip, or try to negotiate. Having phrases prepared can help you stay strong in these moments. Simple responses like, "I understand you're disappointed, but this is what works for me," or "I've given this thought, and this is my decision," can be powerful tools. Use the power of the pause when you feel pressured to say yes immediately. Most requests don't require an instant response, even though they're often presented as if they do. Developing the habit of saying, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," or "I need to think about that," gives you time to consider whether the commitment aligns with your priorities and capacity. Practice saying no without extensive justification. While it's natural to want to explain your reasoning, over-explaining often invites negotiation and can weaken your boundary. You don't owe anyone a detailed explanation for protecting your time and energy. "No, I won't be able to do that" is a complete sentence. Set boundaries around your time, energy, and emotional availability. This might mean establishing specific hours when you're available for work calls, limiting how much time you spend listening to friends vent without reciprocal support, or declining to participate in conversations that consistently leave you feeling drained or negative. Create physical boundaries that support your emotional wants. This could involve creating a dedicated workspace if you work from home, using separate phone numbers for personal and professional contacts, or establishing certain areas of your home as off-limits for work-related activities. Learn to recognize and trust your internal signals. Your body and emotions are constantly giving you information about what feels right and what doesn't. That knot in your stomach when someone asks you to take on another commitment, the exhaustion you feel after spending time with certain people, the sense of dread when your phone rings. These are all valuable data points that can guide your boundary-setting decisions. The power of no as self-respect. The word no is perhaps the most powerful tool in your boundary-setting arsenal, yet it's often the hardest word for people-pleasers to say. Learning to say no without guilt or extensive justification is a profound act of self-respect that honors your time, energy, and values. Many people struggle with saying no because they've learned to equate it with rejection or meanness. But saying no to one thing is actually saying yes to something else, often something more important. When you decline a commitment that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to rest, to priorities that matter more, to activities that energize rather than drain you. Reframing no as a positive choice rather than a negative rejection can help reduce the guilt associated with it. Instead of thinking, "I'm disappointing this person by saying no," try thinking, "I'm honoring my commitment to myself by protecting my energy for what matters most." It's also helpful to remember that saying no often does others a favor, even if they don't immediately see it that way. When you say yes to something you don't want to do, you often show up with resentment, low energy, or poor performance. When you say no and allow someone else to take on a task, perhaps someone who genuinely wants to do it, everyone benefits. There are many ways to say no, and finding language that feels authentic to you makes the process easier. You might say, "I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I got too much on my plate right now." Or simply, "No, but thank you for thinking of me." The key is to be clear, kind, and final in your communication. Sometimes people will ask for explanations when you say no, and it's important to remember that you don't owe anyone a detailed justification for protecting your time and energy. If you choose to give a reason, keep it simple and avoid creating elaborate excuses that you'll need to remember later. Practice saying no in low-stakes situations to build your confidence for more challenging conversations. The cashier who asks if you want to sign up for a store credit card, the friend who invites you to an event you're not interested in, the colleague who asks you to cover their shift when you already have plans. These are all opportunities to practice using your voice to protect your boundaries. Remember that saying no gets easier with practice. The first few times might feel uncomfortable or even scary, but as you experience the freedom and peace that come with protecting your energy, saying no becomes less about depriving others and more about honoring yourself. Protecting your peace, the ultimate act of self-love. Your peace is not a luxury, it's a necessity. In a world that constantly demands your attention, energy, and emotional labor, protecting your inner calm becomes a radical act of self-preservation and self-love. This peace is what allows you to think clearly, make good decisions, show up fully for the relationships and activities that matter most, and maintain your physical and mental health. When you consistently allow your boundaries to be violated, when you say yes to everything and everyone, when you give more than you have to give, you're not just depleting your energy, you're disturbing your peace. This disturbance manifests as anxiety, resentment, overwhelm, and a general sense that your life is out of control. Protecting your peace requires becoming very selective about what and whom you allow into your inner world. This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring, but rather becoming discerning about where you invest your emotional energy. It means choosing relationships that are reciprocal, activities that align with your values, and commitments that contribute to rather than detract from your overall well-being. Creating rituals and practices that restore your peace is just as important as setting boundaries to protect it. This might include daily meditation, regular time in nature, journaling, creative activities, or simply moments of silence and stillness. These practices help you maintain your emotional equilibrium and provide a foundation of inner calm from which you can make boundary decisions. It's also important to recognize that protecting your peace sometimes means making difficult choices. You might need to limit contact with family members who consistently drain your energy, end friendships that are no longer serving you, or change jobs if your current workplace doesn't respect your boundaries. These decisions can be painful, but they're often necessary for your long-term well-being. Learning to see the protection of your peace as an act of love, both for yourself and for others, can help shift your perspective on boundary setting. When you protect your inner calm, you show up as a better friend, partner, parent, colleague, and community member. You have more to give because you're not constantly running on empty. Your peace is also your power. When you're centered and calm, you make better decisions, communicate more effectively, and respond to challenges from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity. This inner stability becomes a gift not just to yourself, but to everyone in your life who benefits from interacting with someone who is grounded and secure. Building your boundary setting practice. Like any important life skill, setting healthy boundaries requires consistent practice and ongoing refinement. Building a sustainable boundary setting practice involves developing both the internal awareness to recognize when boundaries are needed and the external skills to communicate and maintain them effectively. Start by conducting a boundary audit of your current life. Look at your relationships, commitments, and daily activities through the lens of energy management. Which interactions leave you feeling energized and which leave you feeling drained? Where do you feel resentful or overwhelmed? What patterns do you notice in situations where you feel your boundaries have been violated? Create a personal boundary statement that reflects your values and priorities. This might include statements like, "I protect my energy by being selective about my commitments. I honor my need for rest and solitude. I choose relationships that are mutual and respectful," or "I trust my instincts about what feels right for me." Having these guiding principles written down can help you make boundary decisions more confidently. Develop a support system of people who understand and respect your boundary setting journey. This might include friends who are also working on setting healthier boundaries, a therapist who can help you work through guilt and resistance, or mentors who model healthy boundary setting in their own lives. Having support makes the process less isolating and provides accountability. Practice self-compassion as you learn this new skill. You'll make mistakes, feel guilty sometimes, and face resistance both from others and from your own internal critic. Treat yourself with the same kindness you show a good friend who is learning something new and challenging. Celebrate your boundary-setting victories, no matter how small they might seem. Each time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, each time you communicate a limit clearly and kindly, each time you choose to protect your energy over pleasing others, these are all acts of courage that deserve recognition. Regular reflection and adjustment are important parts of maintaining healthy boundaries. Your needs, circumstances, and relationships will evolve over time, and your boundaries should evolve with them. What worked for you 5 years ago might not serve you today, and what serves you today might need adjustment in the future. Remember that boundary setting is not a destination but an ongoing practice. There will always be new situations that challenge your limits, new people who test your resolve, and new opportunities to choose self-respect over people-pleasing. Each of these moments is a chance to deepen your commitment to protecting your emotional energy and honoring your own needs. Your journey forward. As you continue on your journey of learning to love yourself first, remember that setting boundaries without guilt is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. It's a declaration that your needs matter, your energy is valuable, and your peace is worth protecting. It's a commitment to showing up authentically in your relationships rather than from a place of obligation or resentment. The path forward isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Each boundary you set with love and respect, both for yourself and others, creates more space for the relationships and activities that truly nourish your soul. Each time you choose to protect your peace over pleasing others, you're building a life that aligns with your deepest values and truest self. You are worthy of respect, including and especially from yourself. You are worthy of relationships that energize rather than drain you. You are worthy of a life that honors your needs, values, and dreams. Setting boundaries without guilt isn't selfish. It's essential. It's not mean, it's meaningful. It's not cruel, it's courageous. Your future self will thank you for every boundary you set today, for every no you say with love, and for every moment you choose to honor your own well-being. This is how you love yourself first, not by putting everyone else last, but by ensuring that you have the energy, peace, and emotional resources to show up fully for what matters most in your life. The world needs people who are grounded in their own self-worth, clear about their boundaries, and generous from a place of abundance rather than depletion. By learning to set boundaries without guilt, you become one of these people, someone who contributes to the world from a place of strength, authenticity, and genuine care for both yourself and others. Your boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the foundation upon which authentic, sustainable love can flourish. Trust yourself, protect your peace, and remember that in learning to love yourself first, you create space for deeper, more meaningful connections with others. This is the gift of healthy boundaries, not isolation, but intimacy, not selfishness, but genuine self-care that benefits everyone in your life. Chapter 4: Thriving in Your Own Skin. Celebrate your individuality and embrace your authentic self. This chapter shows you how to build a daily practice of self-care, confidence, and inner peace so that love naturally flows from within. The mirror's truth. Sarah stood before her bathroom mirror each morning, rehearsing criticisms that had become as routine as brushing her teeth. Too tall, too loud, too emotional, too much. The reflection staring back seemed to confirm every doubt she carried about herself. But what if that mirror could show something different? What if, instead of highlighting perceived flaws, it could reveal the magnificent tapestry of who she truly was? This is the journey we're embarking on together in this chapter, learning to see ourselves not through the distorted lens of comparison and criticism, but through the clear glass of authentic self-acceptance. Thriving in your own skin isn't about perfection. It's about embracing the beautiful complexity of being uniquely you. Understanding your authentic self. Your authentic self isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of being that you choose moment by moment. It's the voice that whispers your deepest truths when the world gets quiet. It's the part of you that knows what brings joy, what feels aligned, and what makes your soul sing, even when that song doesn't match the melody everyone else seems to be humming. Think about the times when you felt most alive, most present, most genuinely yourself. Perhaps it was while creating something beautiful, having a deep conversation with a friend, or standing in nature feeling completely connected to the world around you. These moments offer glimpses of your authentic self, the person you are when you're not performing, pleasing, or pretending. Your authentic self encompasses your values, your passions, your quirks, your dreams, and yes, even your struggles and imperfections. It's the totality of your human experience, not just the polished parts you're comfortable showing the world. When you begin to honor all aspects of yourself, the light and the shadow, the strength and the vulnerability, you create space for genuine self-love to flourish. The courage to be different. In a world that often rewards conformity, choosing to be authentically yourself requires tremendous courage. It means standing firm in your values even when others don't understand them. It means speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. It means wearing your heart on your sleeve in a culture that often prizes emotional distance. But here's what many people don't realize. Your differences aren't flaws to be hidden or fixed. They're gifts to be celebrated and shared. The world doesn't need another carbon copy of someone else. It needs the irreplaceable contribution that only you can make. Consider the qualities about yourself that you've been taught to see as problems. Maybe you're highly sensitive in a world that tells you to toughen up. Maybe you're a deep thinker in a society that values quick answers. Maybe you're incredibly empathetic when everyone around you seems to prioritize logic over feeling. These aren't weaknesses, they're superpowers that the world desperately needs. Your sensitivity allows you to notice subtleties that others miss, to offer comfort in ways that feel truly healing, to create art or solutions that touch people's souls. Your tendency to think deeply means you can see connections and possibilities that escape surface-level observers. Your empathy enables you to build bridges between people and to advocate for those who need a voice. Building your self-care foundation. Self-care isn't bubble baths and face masks, though those can certainly be part of it. True self-care is the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness, patience, and consideration you'd offer a beloved friend. It's creating a life that feels sustainable, nourishing, and aligned with your authentic self. Start by paying attention to what your body, mind, and spirit are telling you. When do you feel energized versus drained? What activities leave you feeling restored versus depleted? What environments help you thrive versus survive? Your answers to these questions will be unique to you, and honoring them is an act of self-love. Physical self-care might mean moving your body in ways that feel joyful rather than punishing. Maybe that's dancing in your living room, taking walks in nature, or practicing yoga. It could mean nourishing yourself with foods that make you feel vibrant and strong, getting enough sleep, or creating a living space that feels like a sanctuary. Mental and emotional self-care involves protecting your inner world with the same vigilance you'd use to protect a precious garden. This might mean limiting exposure to news or social media when it overwhelms you, setting boundaries with people who consistently drain your energy, or developing practices that help you process difficult emotions in healthy ways. Spiritual self-care, regardless of your religious or philosophical beliefs, involves nurturing your connection to something larger than yourself. This could be spending time in nature, practicing meditation or prayer, engaging in creative expression, or simply setting aside time for quiet reflection and gratitude. The daily practice of self-compassion. One of the most transformative shifts you can make is learning to speak to yourself with compassion. Most of us have an inner critic that would never dare speak to another person the way it speaks to us. We tolerate a level of internal cruelty that we'd never accept from anyone else. Self-compassion isn't about lowering your standards or making excuses for your mistakes. It's about treating yourself with the same understanding you'd offer a good friend who was struggling. It's recognizing that making mistakes, having flaws, and facing challenges is part of the universal human experience, not evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you. When you catch your inner critic in action, try this simple exercise. Pause and ask yourself, how would I respond to a dear friend who came to me with the same struggle? Then offer yourself those same words of encouragement, understanding, and support. Practice speaking to yourself in the first person with kindness. I'm doing the best I can with what I have right now. I'm learning and growing, and that's enough. I deserve the same compassion I so freely give to others. These aren't empty platitudes. They're revolutionary acts of self-love in a culture that profits from your self-doubt. Cultivating inner confidence. True confidence isn't about believing you're perfect or never feeling uncertain. It's about trusting yourself to handle whatever comes your way. It's knowing that even if you don't have all the answers, you have the resilience and wisdom to figure things out as you go. This kind of confidence is built through small acts of self-trust. Each time you honor a commitment you make to yourself, whether it's drinking more water, going to bed earlier, or speaking up in a meeting, you're building evidence that you can rely on yourself. Each time you navigate a challenge successfully, even if imperfectly, you're proving to yourself that you're more capable than you might have believed. Start small. Choose one area of your life where you want to build more confidence and commit to taking one small action each day that moves you in that direction. If you want to feel more confident in social situations, perhaps you commit to making genuine eye contact and smiling at one new person each day. If you want to feel more confident in your creative abilities, maybe you dedicate 10 minutes each morning to writing, drawing, or whatever form of expression calls to you. Celebrate these small victories. Keep a record of moments when you chose courage over comfort, when you honored your needs despite external pressure, or when you trusted your instincts and they guided you well. This isn't about arrogance or superiority. It's about acknowledging the truth of your capabilities and worth. Finding your inner peace. Inner peace isn't the absence of challenges, emotions, or difficulties. It's the ability to remain centered and grounded, even when life feels chaotic. It's knowing that beneath whatever storms may be raging on the surface, there's a still, quiet place within you that remains untouched and unshakable. This peace is cultivated through practices that help you connect with your deeper self. For some, this might be meditation, simply sitting quietly and observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment. For others, it might be journaling, walking in nature, listening to music, or engaging in any activity that helps you feel present and connected to the moment. The key is consistency rather than perfection. Even 5 minutes of mindful breathing each day can create profound shifts in your relationship with yourself and your ability to navigate life's ups and downs from a place of centeredness rather than reactivity. Embracing your whole story. Part of thriving in your own skin means making peace with your entire life story, not just the chapters you're proud of, but the ones that feel messy, painful, or incomplete. Every experience you've had, every mistake you've made, every heartbreak you've endured has contributed to the depth, wisdom, and compassion you carry today. This doesn't mean you need to be grateful for trauma or pretend that painful experiences were actually blessings in disguise. It means recognizing that you've survived everything that has happened to you so far, and that survival has required strength, resilience, and courage that you may not have fully acknowledged. Your scars, both visible and invisible, are not evidence of your brokenness. They're proof of your healing. They're testimony to your ability to endure, to adapt, and to keep moving forward even when the path was unclear. When you can look at your whole story with compassion and even pride for how you've navigated it, you free up enormous amounts of energy that were previously tied up in shame or regret. Creating boundaries that honor your authentic self. Learning to set healthy boundaries is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and others. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're gates that help you choose how you want to engage with the world around you. They're a way of honoring your needs, values, and limits while still maintaining meaningful connections. Setting boundaries often feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you've been conditioned to prioritize other people's comfort over your own well-being. But remember that saying no to something that doesn't align with your authentic self creates space to say yes to what truly matters to you. This might mean declining social invitations when you need time to recharge, speaking up when someone crosses a line, or choosing not to engage in conversations that consistently leave you feeling drained or diminished. It might mean limiting your availability to people who only contact you when they need something, or deciding that certain topics are off limits in your relationships. Good boundaries actually improve your relationships because they allow you to show up more fully and authentically when you do choose to engage. When you're not resentful because you've overextended yourself, when you're not exhausted because you said yes to everything, you have much more to offer the people who truly matter to you. Nurturing your unique gifts. Each of us comes into this world with a unique combination of talents, perspectives, and gifts. Some of these might be obvious. Perhaps you have a beautiful singing voice, a talent for making people laugh, or a gift for seeing solutions that others miss. But many of your most precious gifts might be subtler: your ability to hold space for others' emotions, your talent for bringing out the best in people, or your gift for finding beauty in unexpected places. Thriving in your own skin means not only recognizing these gifts, but actively nurturing and sharing them. This doesn't necessarily mean turning every talent into a career or every gift into a grand gesture. Sometimes it simply means allowing yourself to express these parts of who you are without apology or explanation. If you love to write but have convinced yourself you're not good enough to share your words, try writing for the pure joy of expression rather than for external validation. If you have a gift for bringing people together but worry about being seen as too social, embrace your natural ability to create connection and community. If you have a deep sensitivity that allows you to pick up on subtle emotional nuances, honor this as the superpower it is rather than trying to numb or suppress it. The ripple effect of self-love. When you truly begin to thrive in your own skin, something beautiful happens. Your relationship with yourself becomes the foundation for all your other relationships. The love, compassion, and acceptance you've cultivated internally begins to flow outward naturally, enriching every connection you make. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin because authenticity is magnetic. When you're not constantly seeking validation or approval from others, you're free to offer genuine connection. When you're not harsh and critical with yourself, you naturally extend more grace to those around you. When you've learned to meet your own needs, you can be present for others without expectation or resentment. This doesn't mean you become selfish or self-absorbed. Quite the opposite. When you're no longer depleted by inner criticism and self-rejection, you have so much more to give. Your love becomes a renewable resource rather than something you're desperately trying to earn or hoard. Practical, daily practices. Creating a daily practice that supports your journey of self-love and authenticity doesn't require hours of time or elaborate rituals. It simply requires consistency and intention. Here are some practical ways to incorporate these principles into your everyday life. Begin each morning by setting an intention for how you want to show up in the world that day. This might be as simple as "I will speak to myself with kindness today," or "I will honor my need for quiet time this afternoon." This practice helps you start the day connected to your authentic self rather than immediately falling into reactive patterns. Throughout the day, check in with yourself regularly. Ask yourself, How am I feeling right now? What do I need in this moment? Am I honoring my authentic self in this situation? These brief moments of self-awareness can help you make choices that align with who you truly are rather than who you think you should be. Create a simple evening ritual that helps you transition from the demands of the day to a space of rest and reflection. This might involve writing in a journal, practicing gratitude, doing gentle stretches, or simply sitting quietly for a few minutes. Use this time to acknowledge yourself for the ways you showed up authentically that day and to release any self-criticism or judgment you might be carrying. Embracing imperfection as perfection. One of the most liberating realizations on this journey is understanding that your imperfections aren't obstacles to self-love, they're opportunities for deeper self-acceptance. The goal isn't to become flawless, it's to become whole. It's to embrace all parts of yourself with such tenderness that even your struggles and shortcomings are held with love. This means making friends with your messy emotions instead of trying to fix or suppress them. It means acknowledging your limitations without using them as evidence that you're not enough. It means recognizing that growth and healing aren't linear processes, and that setbacks and difficult days don't erase your progress. When you can look at yourself with the same unconditional love that a parent has for their child, seeing all the beauty and potential even in the midst of tantrums and mistakes, you create space for authentic transformation. You stop trying to force yourself into someone else's definition of perfect and start celebrating the magnificent imperfection of being genuinely, authentically human. Your invitation to thrive. As we reach the end of this chapter, I want to leave you with an invitation rather than a directive. You're invited to experiment with loving yourself exactly as you are right now, while simultaneously staying open to growth and change. You're invited to trust that you are both a masterpiece and a work in progress, and that both of these things can be true at the same time. You're invited to speak to yourself as you would speak to someone you cherish. You're invited to honor your needs as sacred rather than selfish. You're invited to share your gifts with the world not because you have to earn your worth, but because your unique contribution makes the world a richer, more beautiful place. Most importantly, you're invited to remember that learning to thrive in your own skin is not a destination but a daily practice. Some days will feel easier than others. Some moments will feel like breakthrough, and others will feel like setback. All of it is part of the beautiful, messy, miraculous journey of being human. The love you're seeking isn't somewhere out there waiting for you to become worthy of it. It's already within you, waiting for you to remember that you've always been enough, exactly as you are. Your job isn't to earn this love or prove you deserve it. Your job is simply to receive it, to let it fill you up, and to let it overflow into every aspect of your life. You are not too much or too little. You are not too sensitive or too strong. You are not too quiet or too loud. You are exactly the right amount of everything that makes you uniquely, irreplaceably you. And that is more than enough, it is everything. Welcome home to yourself. Welcome to the beautiful adventure of thriving in your own skin.